Geno Smith on the thumbnail. 30 touchdowns last year, 11 interceptions, I believe, 4,200 yards, roughly, something like that. So, he was basically free in best ball drafts pretty much the entire season, realistically. So who's another guy that we might be able to get at the same type of a price tag? And that's for all of these guys. All of these guys are going to be, a similar price tag to who their comparison was going to, or where they were going at last year, compared to where they are now. We're trying to find and identify these players, these types of players, these archetypes, as soon as possible so we can take advantage of it. So again, Geno Smith is kind of the blueprint for this. Who do I think can be this year's Geno Smith? And it's Baker Mayfield for me. Now, this could obviously change if Kyle Trask is the quarterback with Tampa Bay. Second round pick a couple years ago, sat behind Tom Brady. Blaine Gabbert was there, who's just, a professional quarterback, a professional backup quarterback at that. Had been in the system for a long time. Kyle Trask is learning things like that. So now he's going to finally get a shot to earn, a starting role with this team. Whether he's going to take advantage of that or not, it remains to be seen. There's a whole camp battle that doesn't open up until the end of this month that's got to take place. Preseason games, maybe one of them suffers an injury. There's all kinds of factors here that we are unknown. There's a ton of unknown variables in this battle between Kyle Trask and Baker Mayfield. As it looks right now, Baker Mayfield is probably going to be the guy as it sits. He's the front runner, all that kind of stuff. So, and this is obviously pretty, it's pretty obvious is what I should say. The comparison here between Baker and Geno Smith. Why? It's very obvious. Dave Canales goes from the Seattle Seahawks to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He was either the quarterback's coach or the passing game coordinator for the last 5 years with the Seahawks. That included obviously Russell Wilson with Geno Smith this past season. So Dave Canales, gets a lot of credit for the success that we saw with Geno Smith last year. It's pretty clear. It's pretty obvious. He went from the quarterback's coach to the passing game coordinator, back to the quarterback's coach with Geno Smith last year. Now he gets his first shot to be an offensive coordinator. He's only 42 years old. This is an up and coming type of a guy. I really like Dave Canales as a coach. I'm really excited to see what he can do with this offense that should be a little bit improved. And we'll talk through it a little bit more again with the next guy coming up. But right now, Baker Mayfield. So for that, like I said, the last 5 years, he's either been the quarterback's coach or the passing game coordinator. Yes, he's not the offensive coordinator, but he's still very involved with the offense, especially the quarterbacks. And in those last 5 years, the average quarterback stats for the Seattle Seahawks goes like this: 3,980 yards passing, 33 passing touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. That's the averages over the last 5 years between Russell Wilson and Geno Smith. Now, do I think that Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask, for that matter, is going to go out and put up those type of numbers? No, I do not. But, if they can get 3,500, anything over 25 touchdowns and around that 10 interception mark, that's completely fine, again, for a quarterback that you're getting that's completely free, whether, again, it's Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask. And we won't know. Realistically, nothing will shift until, at the very least, probably preseason week 2, maybe preseason week 3 games, when we know who's playing, we know who's starting, we know who's winning that camp battle. Maybe they've named a starting quarterback, maybe they haven't. But again, the parallels are obvious. It's not like I'm breaking ground here, but those are the reasons why I like, Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask. And the reason why is Dave Canales. I just think that he's very good at recognizing what his quarterback is good at and recognizing what they're not so good at, their strengths and their weaknesses. He highlights the strengths, avoids the weaknesses. So he's going to figure out, he's also a former wide receiver. So he's going to find out what his quarterback and wide receivers can do, what they do well, and then emphasize that in the game plan. I think that, and it's cliche for the Seattle Seahawks in the last, since Pete Carroll has been there, they run the ball to set up the pass, a lot of play action, things like that. And I think it's going to look very, very similar with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You got Todd Bowles there, who's obviously the head coach of this team. He's going to be certainly on the hot seat. So he needs to win some games. I think at the end of the day, Bowles gets fired and he ends up being a defensive coordinator. He's a very, very good defensive coordinator, but I'm not so sure he's head coach material. That's just kind of my opinion on Todd Bowles. I'm happy he got another opportunity to run an NFL franchise, but I just think at the end of the day, he's going to settle on being a defensive coordinator, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we know typically for defensive coaches, defensive head coaches, they want their offense to run the ball, control the clock, don't turn the ball over, and, let the defense play good defense, which this team still does have a quite strong defense. So that's what I think they're going to look to do. Play action, run the ball to set up the pass, things like that, things that Dave Canales knows in and out. And we'll see what happens. But, again, it's going to hinge on who wins this camp battle between Baker and Kyle Trask. Again, Baker Mayfield's the front runner right now, and he's going literally free in drafts. You can get him anywhere towards the end of the draft, 18th pick, that's for sure. So if you're drafting a top tier quarterback, nothing wrong with firing a super late Baker Mayfield. I did a stream the other week with, I think, Davis Pang, who said this, where, if you had Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow on the same team last year, Joe Burrow would have only entered your lineup 3 times over, and I think that's including the bye week, over Patrick Mahomes. So it just doesn't make sense to take 2 elite quarterbacks like that. You might as well take a Patrick Mahomes and then a guy like Baker Mayfield. Realistically, it's not going to kill you. It's really, really not. There's teams that had one quarterback that made one quarterback drafted period that made the Best Ball Mania finals. But I'll leave it there.